Hello again, my name is Elad Zohar with Making Space in Music. Today we'll be talking about dynamics. Alright, so dynamics. There's two things we should consider with dynamics, one of which is the size of our pattern, and the second is whether we want to cue a change in dynamic very, very clearly. So in terms of conducting a piano section, we might just want to make our pattern a lot smaller. So if I'm conducting in 4/4, something that is very piano, I might just make my pattern smaller. You do have to consider the fact that if your ensemble is very, very far away and you're conducting something this small, it might be very, very hard for them to read what the tempo is. So you have to judge the size of the pattern based on the distance of your ensemble, but at the very least you can differentiate quieter moments from loud moments with the relative size of your pattern. Now with that said, let's go ahead and move on to cues, because I think that this is a harder mechanic to understand, and it is something that we should spend a little bit of time covering. So cues in general utilize only the left hand, where the right hand will do all of the conducting throughout the entire piece, and the left hand will do a lot of those cues. So I'll go ahead and mirror, with this being my right hand, but your left hand. We'll go ahead and be practicing our crescendos and our decrescendos. And for the sake of this practice, let's start with just doing those crescendos and decrescendos along to a 4-beat pattern. So I'll go ahead and have a metronome on at 100 beats per minute, and we're just gonna move our arm with the palm facing up as we move upwards, and then the palm facing down as we move downwards. And here we go, 5 and 6, left hand only, 5, 6, 7, 8, and up, and down. Back up, and down. And let's stop right here. Cool, so that is essentially what our crescendos and decrescendos will look like. And as you move on with your career, you may see yourself trying to customize the way that you do your crescendos and decrescendos, which is highly encouraged. But for the sake of this beginner series, we're only gonna cover going up and down with that left hand. Now the next piece of the puzzle is attaching those decrescendos and crescendos with the right hand as it continues to conduct. So altogether it would look something like this if we're working in focal point 4/4. So as I go through this, I'm gonna go ahead and give a bar of just 4/4 and then prep my crescendo and decrescendo and give 4 beats of each of those. Here we go. Alright, so going through crescendos and decrescendos isn't the easiest thing to begin with. And most beginners will struggle the most with the fact that you have to balance an articulated pattern with one hand and a smooth pattern with the other. That's something that, for me personally, I had to stand in front of a mirror and just go like this over and over again until it felt right. And adding the other hand in is a matter of muscle memory. Now you can spend time trying to just work through this nice and slowly and associating the two hands together in a way that feels correct to you. But in general, for me, what has been the easiest is helping the brain just isolate the two as two actions that require a certain muscle memory. And the first is just going up and down, and the other is conducting a 4/4 pattern. Now, an exercise you can do to practice this is put a metronome on and basically work in 12 count phrases. For one measure, you do nothing. For the next measure, you crescendo. The next measure, you decrescendo, and then stop. And even there, you can see I had a little bit of a glitch around beat 3, and if you practice this on your own, it is something that I'd highly encourage you to put a lot of attention and detail into, because a lot of young conductors, again, struggle with that smoothness of the crescendo and decrescendo, and it's something that even I continue to improve on. If that exercise feels a little easy to you, another exercise you can try is just making those crescendos and decrescendos twice as long. Now you can either put 2 bars of break in between or 1, but at the very least, by making those crescendos slower, you have to spend a lot more time focusing on pacing and smoothing out the motion from the bottom to the top, and vice versa from top to bottom. And while doing that, keeping that right hand going with the tempo, still looking good, still hitting the same focal point. It is something that, like I said, is not intuitive, but it is a great thing to have. Hand isolation is so important as a conductor, and is a tool that you should definitely continue working to develop towards. I do want to say that for this video, we are starting to work into more intermediate concepts as young conductors, and if you still don't feel confident with videos like 3 and 4, I really encourage you to pause this, go back, watch those again, get comfortable, and then come back to this, because it'll do you no good to try to do crescendos, decrescendos, and all these stylistic things without having the fundamental building blocks below this ready to go. With that said, my name is Elad Zohar, and I'll see you next time.